How's it going, everyone? This is Kevin. Today I want to bring along with me to show you the behind the scenes of shooting the Chasing the Sunset video with the Sony A7 IV and the Tamron 35-150. So let's jump right into it. I wanted to show you a little bit of what went through with making that little short film that I made called Chasing the Sunset, mainly because it was more of a on the moment, kind of on the go kind of style of shooting. We didn't really have a set plan, and I wanted to showcase what we used and how we used it to see if it helps you out, just to know how, the gear that was used for this little short film that I really enjoyed making, and I thought it turned out pretty cool. So as you know, we used the A7 IV when it came down to the camera setup, and then also the Tamron 35-150, which was very versatile to have everything covered in one lens for whether it was like up close and personal shots or a little bit more establishing shots, with a 35 a little bit wider, going to the 150 range, just depending on what we needed. I also used my Zhiyun Crane 2S stabilizer for some of the shots that I needed to have more stability when it came down to shooting the video. So I'm going to show you here shortly basically how we filmed it and let the, self-commentary happen of in the moment that we're using. That way you can see how I use this, or if I use some handheld shots, just to know why I use it in certain things like that too. So without further ado, this is the behind the scenes that you can check out now. This is a little bit of the behind the scenes when it came down to the video that you guys saw. So hopefully you enjoy it. We're going to be using right now the light that's coming very nicely into the seating area to just kind of showcase, Kelsey looking at an app, or that's more like the kind of weather app, just to see for the sunset, because that's the whole point of it, chasing the sunset. So she's hoping that the sunset will be nice. We don't even know if today the sunset will be nice, but we're going to still have to plan like it is. So we're going to film around here real quick, since the sunset won't be for about another hour and a half. Gotta start now since the sun is coming down. I'm using the Zhiyun Crane 2S when it came down to my gimbal setup with my Tamron 35-150 and the Sony A7 IV. I decided to use gimbal and handheld because I wanted to have some smooth kind of shots, while also the diversity of being able to shoot with handheld to get those kind of angles that you can't really get with a gimbal as easily. Just made it a lot easier to get every little kind of detail that I wanted, whether it was just more of the phone, of her just sitting down, or also just any movement that I wanted to create and having that nice smooth movement. That was the main thing, that the purpose of that was for the choices of it, have a little bit of the motions being smooth, but while also having a little bit more rougher movement when it came down to the handheld shots like this one. Just kind of getting up and going handheld just made sense, because that way when we're inside the car, the handheld made sense only for more stationary shots, like turning on the car, or here we're all just getting kind of ready to start driving, shifting the gears into drive to get going since it's stationary. But then as we move on to the driving part, we get a little bit more of that shakiness. So the gimbal made sense for me to kind of use it more into getting the details that I wanted to have that smoother video while the cart was still shaking. So it had that kind of not overly done too shakiness of footage, while I'm trying to capture as much as I can when it comes down to the video inside the vehicle. Get those nice details and just make sure that it's just looking as smooth as possible, while also showing a little bit of camera movement. Now the gimbal made sense to be used outside because while walking, want to make sure it's smooth as possible for me, something that I thought would be looking kind of good for this type of video. Oh, well, we'll have you just kind of like walk from here, and then you can just sit on this big one, I guess, should be fine.
From here or here?
From there, it should be good. Like, I'll follow you in a bit. From the grass closer to the rocks area. Hold on a sec. And go. Let's do one more time. Do what? Yeah, the walk and then sitting down again. 'Cause I'm gonna do it from this way forward too. As we were waiting, I decided to do a little bit of a time lapse just to kind of showcase the time going by as we wait for the nice sunset. And go. Follow it. There you go. There you go, keeping it there. There we go. That looks good. Now to set up for the final shot, decided to do a little bit of manual focus just because I was going to have her to get up and move and didn't want to lose focus. And now that you've seen the behind the scenes, I didn't showcase every little detail, but I try to showcase as much as I could because sometimes we would forget to, set up the POV style of camera since I use the GoPro for a lot of the behind the scenes. Some of my Sony A7S III was used as well, but mainly the GoPro just to showcase me shooting more in the raw moment and capture a little bit of dialogue, me using, how I was shooting, what I was telling Kelsey to do when it came down to the shooting of it. One of the main things that I really enjoyed was just having the stability with a stabilizer with this type of lens, since it is a little bit heavier of a setup. It was really quite nice to be able to have very steady footage because the Tamron lens does not have any stabilization, but the Sony A7 IV does. So that made it a little bit better to kind of combine with the gimbal to make sure that I would have the stable shots when I needed them, while also having to do some of those handheld shots to add a little bit more raw feeling. My ultimate goal was to showcase, the process that us photographers and videographers tend to go through, chasing the next shot, wanting to achieve something, and always kind of setting yourself up to chase something rather than focus on what you can and cannot control. I mean, a lot of the times we kind of go, we're our worst critics when it comes down to it. We're always harsh on ourselves. Sometimes we're very proud of a shot for one day and all of a sudden we're not happy with it. So this was a little bit of a short film to showcase that, chasing the next sunset, since most of us want to shoot at the best hour, or wanting to always capture that next shot that will kind of give us that thrill. So that was the main purpose of this video, and I thought it really was really nice to convey everything with this one lens setup. But this one is just very nice because I was able to get really cool, just like, establishing shots, and I also got to get more up close and personal, whether it was of the camera or Kelsey as she was taking photos, the environment. Love the water shots, to be honest. It seemed like it worked out pretty great, in all honesty, when it came down to just having this perfect setup. I've been trying to use my Sony A7 IV more for video, just because I know a lot of people have asked me quite a bit when it comes down to the Sony A7 IV versus the Sony A7S III when it comes down to video. Can they get by with just the A7 IV? And I mean, you saw the short film. I didn't use that much slow-mo, to be honest. I might have used a couple 60 frames per second, but not too much of the slow motion whatsoever, to be honest, because it didn't really need it in this film. So that's the same thing that I like to tell people when it comes down to your filming. It's what you are going to be using that makes sense for what camera you're going to be using. For me, it just made sense to just bring the A7 IV because I knew that I wasn't going to be taking too much 120 frames per second to do in 4K. And even with the 4K 60 crop, which I use very minor on, it just worked out perfectly for my needs. So pairing it up with this lens, the Sony A7 IV just kind of was very unmatched, in my honest opinion, for what you're getting worth with this lens. I know it's a little bit of a girthy boy, but at the same time, I was able to create every shot that I wanted to just with one lens into this gimbal without having to always change back and forth lenses, always having to, set up my gimbal once again. I mean, I'm able to go to a certain length without having to rebalance it all, which was kind of very nice to do because now I'm able to be more efficient since we have a short window with light and want to make the best out of it. Some of my favorite shots with this is just shooting at 35 at f2. I mean, you just get a lot more, that blur background and getting up close to the subject. It works really good with the separation as well. So I think it was just a great kind of setup, and overall just very happy with this lens and the A7 IV, and also using my gimbal because I know a lot of people have asked me, hey, like, can I use this gimbal or what? This is the gimbal that I got. I've made a video about it before and it has been phenomenal when it comes down to balancing my Sony A7 IV or A7S III with the Tamron 35-150 to make sure that it's nice and balanced and it's not still like, shaky. I mean, granted, it is a little bit of a heavy setup, but it's still pretty good to use it for what you need and create the shots that you're wanting to. I thought it was really good to be able to create everything. Even in car, I was able to use my stabilizer to get some of the smoother kind of shots that I needed, and also some handheld ones. So it turned out pretty great, and hopefully these little behind the scenes helped you guys out. I really want to make more of these short films because I enjoy making them just sporadically. I mean, eventually I'll start making more maybe with brand related. So if that happens, that'll be kind of cool to do. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to show you guys, you know, the behind the scenes and showcase what we were able to create with this setup. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.